Hey everybody, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming, and in today's Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about colony development. Now, this is not just about colonies, but it encompasses basically your entire economy and ecosystem. So we're going to be talking about colonies and how you develop them. We're going to be talking about extractors, aka extractum, and how you get different resources, both from planets as well as through colonies. We're going to talk about how that interacts with contracts, with reputations, and then how everything comes together to give you your profit factor and how that interacts with reputations so that you can get more items. Now, in a nutshell, if you're brand new to this game, and you want to know, well, why do you care about colonies and colony development? Basically, in a nutshell, for two reasons. Number one, there's going to be a variety of story elements that will be impacted on with how you develop colonies. And then from just a pure gameplay perspective when it comes to loot, what you have to understand is as a rogue trader, you're not going to be just going to vendors and buying items of money. Instead, you're going to be interacting with a variety of reputations. And as your profit factor increases, you're just going to simply unlock new tiers of equipment. And as you unlock those tiers, you're going to be able to get it for free. I will be going over all of this and explaining it in depth in this video. Now, remember, if you end up finding this video helpful, you can help me out in two ways. Number one, drop a like. And of course, subscribe. But the second thing that can greatly help me is make sure to drop a comment. Let me know either feedback on the video, or if you have other questions about these systems, please let me know. I'll do my best to read all the comments and respond as best as I can. So now, without further ado, let's dive into the colony development and economy system of Rogue Trader. All right, we're going to start this guide kind of backwards, and I'm going to show you the end result of all the work you're going to get. As I mentioned, everything's going to lead to you getting an increased profit factor. And the reason you want profit factor to be high is it's going to have a direct connection with how you interact with the different reputations in the game. And these are all the reputations. Now, as your reputations increase, and you'll notice I have different levels. Like with explorations, I have 21, for example. Some of these are really low still. But when you interact with them, you will notice that at the different tiers, each item is going to have this little number in the lower right-hand corner. This is your profit factor. So as you unlock things, the way it works is, as long as you have a minimum of this number, and notice I have 107 here right now, you can literally just click on these items. You don't pay anything extra, and you get them. All these items right here I can get. And as you can see, there are two requirements, reputation and a profit factor. So if I unlock, for example, level 22 of explorations, I'll be able to get these 3 advanced medkits for free, as well as this item, the Omniscia Holy Symbol, and so forth. And so they're going to get items for your characters. You're also going to be able to unlock items for your void ship. That's going to be through here, for this reputation. And there's just a variety of items. I've got a lot of them already in this game for the void ships because I've been playing this quite a bit. But again, lots of items, lots of different inventory things. Some are consumable, and then every single type of loot for every type of character you could imagine as you up your profit factor and reputations. Now, in just a moment, we will be talking in depth about how to get this profit factor nice and high. But the way you get your levels up through reputation is two ways. Here, when you interact with the reputations, you're going to be able to go and basically sacrifice any type of items here like this. And as you click them, you're going to notice at the bottom, it's going to add up how much reputation points you're going to get total. On the left-hand side, it's going to show you what each type of items is worth. So holy gifts, for example, and heretic trophies are worth the most. And then everything goes down from there. And as you click the different options, it's going to add up the points, and then it's going to add to this total. Now, you may notice I'm at a very high point here, 56,000, almost 57,000. So I will point out, I did not get the majority of these points through trading things in, through inventory items like this. So this is one way of doing it. You know, traded those in, and my reputation counter went up here. But the second way you're going to get this is through different colony interactions. So you're going to be building certain buildings and features on your colonies, and they may give you massive amounts of reputation points, or maybe like 5,000, 10,000, and so forth. So that is the second way you're going to get those reputation points. So now that you know the two ways to get reputation, to get your reputation levels up across the different factions, let's talk about how you can get your profits up. All right, so now we will be talking about profits. Now, there are two main ways to get your profits up. One is going to be within the story. You will sometimes make choices, and those choices may literally tell you, oh, you made this decision, your profit has increased by 2 or 3 or 5. Or maybe you make other choices and your profit will go down. But that's going to be a minor part of this score. Again, of the 107 points in profits, there's a very small amount I made through just making special features. Most of it is going to be building different projects on the planets. So here I want to give you an example of a specific colony projects. When you start out, you're going to only have level 1 colony projects, and then they're going to go up rank 2, rank 3, rank 4, rank 5. And the big thing you have to know right off the bat is they're all going to have certain levels of requirements. And when you start at the very first level, they're going to be very, very basic, but you will have options that are going to be mutually exclusive. So for example, here, I had created this project, the Ultra Requisitors. And what it basically did was when I chose to build this, it blocked 2 other projects. So I could have either chosen this one, or Chem Princes, or Sophocracy. And as a reward, I got my profit factor increased by 1. I got this weapon, Starblight. And then it increased one of my main 3 stats, Complacency. We'll talk about that in a second. And it also gave me a base ×1 Xenotech resource and provisions resource. Now this is very important. This is not just a baseline 1 provisions and 1 Xenotech. Think of this as a baseline production, and it gets modified by factors. And we'll talk about what these resources are for in a second. Now, as I mentioned, you're always going to have mutually exclusive options popping up. So, for example, here, the choice was between this choice, as I mentioned, but I could have chosen Chem Princess. And again, it would have blocked the other 2 options. This would have given me Tears of Repentance. We've gotten 5 of these, and also access to getting these more regularly, as you can see, replenishing of these items. And then it would have instead increased my security, given me chemicals and provisions. Or this final option was like this. It would have given me another stimulant that you could also replenish and get more over time. And this one would have given me more provisions and efficiency. And again, none of these other 2 gave me any profit margin. This one did. And again, in my case, I wanted this gun, so I made that choice. You also may want to choose that for roleplay purposes. Now, as we go up in rank 2s and so forth, you will notice that some of them may say it requires other prerequisites. So here it says to get the reaping, for example, the following project must be completed in this protectorate, giants. And it also required, in this case, 3 plasteel and 1 promethium. And it gave me 1 profit factor, 5 provisions. This is going to bring us to talking about resources. At the top here, you're going to notice all your different resources. And again, I have quite a bit of them already. And they are people, provisions, chemicals, plasteel, mechanisms, promethium, weapons, xenotech, adamantine, and phlogiston, and then of course you have your profit factor. Now, how do you get resources? Well, at the very beginning of your kind of world travels, the first way you're going to actually get them is not going to be at the colonies. Instead, you're going to be traveling around the world, or rather, kind of your protectorate, and you're going to go to different planets, like this rocky world, and you're going to scan them. And when you do, you may find locations like this, and it will say, for example, phlogiston, and you're going to be able to use something called extractum, basically extractors, and put them on these planets. Now, when you start, you're going to have a very limited number of them. I believe between 3 and 5. And you're going to find a lot of different planets that are going to have various levels of resources. So here are my tips for resources. Do not automatically place them down on locations just because you found one, because you will run out of them early game. You're going to have to be a little bit more selective. And my golden rule is, unless it's adamantine, from my experience, adamantine early on, it can be important for some projects, and it's really quite rare early in the game. So of those, I had places down, even if it was only 2 or 3. But in general, I want to make sure you're getting a minimum of 4 resources before you place one of these to be efficient. Sometimes you may find ones that give you 5, 6, or 7, but be very strategic. And some of these are more rare than others. I have found that phlogiston is very rare early on. Adamantine is very rare. Xenotech is very rare. I found you're going to find a ton of plasteel. Again, I have way more than I need, so don't worry too much. Unless it's like 4 or 5 minimum, do not place those down. People, you're not going to find very often on a planet like this. It's going to be mainly from colonies. Provisions, again, you'll end up finding a decent amount of these. Chemicals, you will not find a lot of, but you have opportunities with buildings to get a ton of them. Mechanisms are very rare, and again, these will also be through colonies. Promethium, there's not a ton of planets with it, but the ones that do have them have a lot. So it's kind of feast or famine, I found. You're going to find these burning worlds that have a ton of them. When you find them, make sure you place your extractum on them. Have at least 10 or so. And weapons are pretty much all from colonies. You're not going to find these because it's obviously not a natural resource. And these are, as I mentioned, the last 3 are quite rare. So again, anytime you find 4 or 5 or more, place them down as you can. The way you get more extractum is by completing the main story missions, especially in Act 2 as you finish the different colonies. You're going to get a baseline of them, I think around 5 or so each time. You can also, there are a couple of story events. If you make a certain decision, you get more of them. But that's not guaranteed depending what choices you make. And then finally, at colonies, there is, or not finally, because you're also going to get it through reputation, as I mentioned in a second. But certain colony buildings will give you a good amount of these. But it is, again, a mutually exclusive choice. So you either make that choice and you get more extractum, or you're going to get another benefit and not get the extractum. And finally, there is a reputation. I believe it's the Imperium reputation, the one on the far right. At a certain point total, you're going to be able to unlock, and I believe get 10 extractum as well from there. So there is a variety of ways to get this later on in the game. You're going to have a bigger surplus potentially, like I do, but early on you have to be really picky. Just try and get a balance of your resources. Now, the next way you're going to interact with resources is through contracts, and you're going to unlock these pretty early in the game. At first, there's not going to be very many of them. And you can access them by just hitting J or get to your journal, and it's its third tab. Now, these are always give and take. And so the way it works here is, for example, this one, Star Devourer. The way it works is you need to have at least 7 provisions, and yes, it will utilize these provisions and minus them from your total. But when you complete the contract, you will get 5 Promethium, and all these different ones. Some of them I would never do. Like, I had a ton of provisions initially and not as many people, so I wouldn't want to sacrifice these, but you can. Now, there's also a story related to each one, so maybe just for RP reasons, you may choose not to do one or the other. But these different ones, you will always notice you can sacrifice certain aspects. So this one would actually lower your profit factor by 3. And you would get Phloxstein. Now, Phloxstein, again, is pretty rare, so if you need it for certain buildings, etc., this is a good trade-off. And again, I'll give you some of my examples of these that I haven't completed yet. You can pretty much trade all types of resources one for another. And so this is something, again, you're going to get very few of them early on in the game, but as you get into Act 4, for example, a ton more are going to open up. All right, so now we are back to the colony view, so you should understand at this point the basics of the resources and why we're getting them. So when you start with your each colony, it's going to be really, really small. It's going to have none of these projects done. I've done quite a few of them, as you can see here. Now, what do you need to know about colonies? Colonies, first of all, are going to have characteristics, and there's 3 of them. There's efficiency, and so, as I mentioned, colonies are going to, when we make projects, going to produce base levels of the different resources, but that can be multiplied. So, for example, efficiency for each point is going to increase the production of a resource by 10%. So if I have 10 here, it's going to double it. What does that mean? Basically, that means right here, early on, I am producing 1 Xenotech, but because my proficiency is 10, or efficiency is 10, that's going to increase it by double, by 100%, so I'm really producing 2. That's how I'm getting these insane numbers here, for example. And a lot of them, like here, there's provisions 5. So with my efficiency of 10, that's going to actually make it that I'm producing 10 provisions. Again, this is why I have this bigger number of the production. So while the requirements are just flat requirements, do note that your actual reward will scale depending on how well you increase your colony characteristics. Now, complacency affects the amount of profit factor production. Also, the speed of the projects on a colony, and it increases by 10% each. So I have a plus 80% increase to colony production. Sometimes this means that my projects get built almost instantly. And you pass time, by the way, anytime you travel on the star map from location to location, time traverses, I guess, or increases. Now, do note, that part's not as big of a deal. It's really your profit factor that matters. And again, as I mentioned, there are going to be choices that will be increasing profit factor. And early on, it may only be profit factor 1. But some of these higher level ones, let's take a look at how much they factor things out. This one, for example, is profit factor 3. So if I have complacency 10, for example, that 3 will really turn into a 6. It's going to double it again. And this is how I'm getting these huge numbers of 107. And finally, I have security. And security is a little different. It affects the ability of colonies to cope with negative events on their own. So you will sometimes have events pop up on the left, and you're going to have to fly to them in the actual universe. And make choices, and those choices will again impact your colony characteristics in a positive or negative way, or other story elements are going to get impacted. The higher your security level, the more likely you are, or less likely you are to need to deal with those. Because do note, this interaction here, you don't have to fly to your actual colonies to do it. You can just hit Y, which is your colony button on PC. Not sure what it is on consoles, but you can look that up under controls under consoles. And you can do this remotely. Anywhere, anytime you're in space, you can make these choices. Now you're also going to get colony traits. And these different traits you're going to get from making decisions on your planets and also from completing these various projects. And if you mouse over them, it'll tell you their impact. So this one gave me 1 efficiency, complacency, and security. This one as well. This one, you'll notice, gave me +2 to complacency, but -1 to security. Some of these different various projects are also going to not just impact one location. It may impact a variety of locations, and I'll show you that in a second. I also want to point out certain options like the secrets of winter scales that I completed. Now notice this required you have a profit factor of 35 minimum. So in this case, when you see this, this is just a threshold you have to beat. It doesn't actually cost you 35 profits, luckily. And you also do need to spend 3 provisions. And I got a ton of chemicals and promethium, but it also unlocks a contract, blood and nephium. So that's another potential thing that you can get. Let's look at some other options. This is the other element that's really nice, a cure for sloth. If you do this project, it costs 3 chemicals, but now all colonies get +1 to efficiency. So anytime you have the all colony, this is way more powerful because again, you'll notice we have 4 colonies right now. So this one project, if you complete it, is basically worth +4 total. Here's one I was not able to get. Now why? Well, I didn't have reputation with Drushians have to be at least 28,000. And you may think early on in the game like, oh my god, that's really high, and it is. But notice some of these rewards. They build on top of each other. So I didn't pick this because for example, in this case, I don't have this reputation, but in addition, if you pick it, it would also block rows of Zamarkand, right? This is this project. So they're mutually exclusive. And let's look at the cost and rewards. Well, here you would get this Eye of Joyous, which is a helmet piece, which is quite interesting and quite powerful if you're going to be a psyker that's dogmatic. But it will give you +3,500 reputation, increase your complacency by 2, and lower your efficiency. If you had done Rose instead, you'll get access to this reusable consumable. Also, it will replenish and you're going to be able to get access to more. But this one gives you profit factor, chemicals, a lot of chemicals, and a good amount of reputation with this reputation here. Again, the costs are you get to have 29,000 rep here, use 3 people, 1 Xenotech. And then again, as you go up at higher ranks, I'll give you a couple more other examples of this. This one here has a lot of requirements. It needs plant steel. It will block these 2 other projects. Requires that one of these projects has been built here. And then it also costs weapons and adamantine. But you get a massive +4 to security and this specific melee weapon. So a lot of times you're going to notice you will get very unique and special weapons. So here is a special ability on this melee attack. So it's quite decent, especially early to mid game. And then finally, I wanted to kind of give you a couple examples of really high tier projects here for tier 4. They will have major potential positive and negative effects. Here's another one, tons of chemicals, tons of a good amount of profit factor. And then you go all the way to level 5. Now do notice, here's another good example here. Sometimes it will give you player features. So if you were to get shelter, you get this. Merciful Savior. Each time an ally is healed in combat, the damage of this ally is increased by 4% until the end of combat, and it stacks. Very powerful. So if you have a ton of healers, healing different characters, you can infinitely stack this bonus. So if you heal 10 times over combat, any allies get healed in any way, well, that's 40% extra damage. But again, you could also get this. if you do Forbidden Planet, and now all allies gain 12% dodge against Xenos. Xenos is, again, anything that's alien, non-human. Or you go for a pleasure world, you get more profit factor, and you get Watcher from Above, this really, really powerful one-handed weapon. And each planet is going to have unique projects, unique choices. You can also get items for your Void Ship. You can even unlock, for example, to have your Void Ship have a second ship that's AI controlled that supports you and protects you. So there you have it, guys. That's how everything interconnects. How your colonies, your contracts, your extractors on various planets increase all these various stats and resources, and in turn it will eventually increase your profit factors, which again will play and combine with your reputation levels to unlock some very, very powerful loots in the game. It's a really, really fun system. You make a ton of choices. Do note some of them will be connected to kind of your conviction system. So if you're heretical, some of the choices will increase heretical. Other times, other convictions may be chosen. And there's a ton of replayability here because, again, so many of these different buildings are mutually exclusive. Hope you guys found this video really helpful. If you did, please support the channel again by dropping a like. Help me with the algorithm to get this out to more people by dropping comments that are related to the content. If you have any other questions about the economy and colony building, please let me know and I will do my very best to answer those questions. Subscribe to see more RPG content, especially in the coming weeks and months for Rogue Trader. And as always, guys, thank you for all your support, and I will see you in the next video.